The gigantic government sucks. Pursuit of happiness radio is deluxe. Liberty and freedom will make you smile. The pursuit of happiness on your radio dial. Just as cheeseburgers and liberty fries, it's pursuit of happiness time.
Greetings. Hello. Hello all. Hi, welcome. Live from KPRC studio in Houston, Texas with my buddy Christian Collins through the Texas Youth Summit. How you doing, my brother?
My man. Great to be on with you.
Christian and I decided we wanted to hang out today. We wanted to do a live stream. So we're live right now on social media. We are on Facebook. We are on the Book of Faces, the Tube of Views. We are on Elon Musk's platform, and we are also on the Gram of Instas. And Christian and I decided to go live today. He was in town. We were going to hang out. Christian and I are good friends and like-minded individuals and patriots and allies in this bizarre culture war that us reasonable people seem to be fighting. And also two people that are voting today. You voted.
I voted. It was a unique experience. I voted here today, and I'm excited to see what will happen. I think we'll have some great people that'll be elected. And let's see what happens on March 1st.
Let's talk about that. So you March
5th.
This is the first time you ever voted in downtown Houston?
Yes, it was a unique experience. So
what was that like?
Well, I had a provisional ballot, and so going in there and seeing some folks that were actually very kind and very hospitable. But sometimes you wonder, being a Republican, when they ask you what your party affiliation is, and you know that predominantly they're mostly Democrats there. So you wonder, is that vote going to end up in the right place?
And do you think it did?
I think so, but as Ronald Reagan said, trust but verify. So I will be looking it up later just to make sure. I'll follow the website and protocol to make sure that the vote did count.
All right, so I'm not going to get into conspiracy theories right now live on the radio show because there's no time for that. There's no time for conspiracy theories today. But there is a website in Texas where you can look up if you voted or not. And the Walton and Johnson listeners of our morning show know we have had a weird history with this website and looking up friends, some of them alive, some of them dead, to verify whether or not they voted or didn't vote. And I'll just, without telling a long-winded story that a lot of our listeners have heard before, we have discovered strange things on that website that were both eerie and creepy and unsettling all at the same time.
Well, I think there's a lot of people that have had those stories, and the point is you just make sure that you know your vote counted.
Yeah, okay. So who was on your ballot that you were excited about?
Well, of course, I voted for President Trump. That's a no-brainer.
Mm-hmm.
Voted for Senator Ted Cruz. Of course, his primary is just like Trump's, is no contest. And I voted for Senator Paul Betancourt. And then there were judges that I looked at and taking into everything into account. It's important that we know and are educated on all those races.
Okay, so you and I both know here in the state of Texas, there's a swamp in the Republican Party. There's the George P. Bush swamp, and it's infected its tentacles into everything. We saw it this past year with the Ken Paxton impeachment. Didn't make any sense. And so now two very prominent Republicans have put out their list of people that they're endorsing. One of them is Greg Abbott, and that's mostly school choice candidates. I love a school choice candidate. Similarly, Ken Paxton put out a separate but similar list. It's not exactly the same, of people that basically didn't try to impeach him, combined together with people that he thinks would be more conservative than some of the incumbents. Have you had a chance to review both of those lists? Were any of those candidates on your ballot?
There is some overlap there, and there are some differences, but there is some overlap there. And generally, I agree with both of their choices. So I think we need to have school choice. That is the hallmark issue, I think, that will be decided on in the upcoming legislative session. We have to have that here in Texas. We deserve that. Overwhelming majority of Texans want this, but there were a certain number of Republicans that just didn't support it.
Right.
And the impeachment of Ken Paxton is probably the most unjust thing I've ever seen. Look, we're fighting to keep our state red.
Yeah.
Right. And you're spending, hard-earned time, dollars, and resources on what? A really petty, intra-party fight that, really is only going to distract us from beating our true enemy, the Democrats.
Yeah, it's perfectly stated, Christian. And I feel like when you look at what happened over the past year, people that vote in this state, Republicans, taxpayers, we got screwed. What happened to us was absolutely unjust. We asked our lawmakers to go out and pass school choice. They didn't do it. And then the thing with Ken Paxton was just a kick in the groin to top it off. It was like, no, we're not going to do what you asked. Oh, by the way, the attorney general, who's overwhelmingly been elected more than once, we're going to go ahead and look at allegations that we made, 8 years ago, and we're going to impeach him for that. Any evidence to back this up? None. Is there a more effective attorney general in America right now than Ken Paxton?
No. And there's a reason why President Trump is so behind him. It's because Ken Paxton has stood for the issues that matter. And he's fought for Texans, and he's fought for election integrity, most importantly, like maybe no attorney general in the country has. And so the loyalty is there from the Trump camp, and MAGA is behind Ken Paxton. And there's a lot of grassroots Tea Party, Republican women, a lot of people that are in the know. They really understand that Ken Paxton is the right choice.
Yeah. We used to go live on this show all the time, Christian. Did you know that? I used to go live every afternoon. We'd get dozens turned into hundreds of people would watch a live stream of our humble little afternoon local talk radio show. And then the 2020 election happened. And when the 2020 election happened, they started demonetizing us, deplatforming us, and it was mostly over two issues. One of them was questioning the election. I got a flag on YouTube for accurately predicting the results of the California runoff. Do you remember when there was a California special election with Larry Elder and Gavin Newsom? And I predicted that Larry Elder would lose, and I explained why I thought he would lose. I didn't trust the election system there. Then after he lost, I got a flag on YouTube for being right. I mean, it didn't make it. They're like, oh no, your method, your prediction was correct. Your methodology, we don't approve of it. And so I was suspended from YouTube for, I don't know, a week or something like that. And stuff like this happened to me on Facebook a lot too, often for saying things about vaccines, masks, the Wuhan lab leak theory, and now this, right? We're talking about Ken Paxton. Ken Paxton is one of the only attorney generals in the country that's gone after Pfizer. And 2 years ago, if you criticized Pfizer on social media, especially on Facebook, especially on Instagram, especially on YouTube, you could almost certainly guarantee you were going to get demonetized or deplatformed for it. Well, today here's a report from Bloomberg. Bloomberg, one of the Democrats that ran for president in 2020, has published this report today. And the headline reads, largest COVID vaccine study ever finds links to health conditions. Now, that's pretty vague, right? But what they talk about here is how vaccines that protect against severe illness, death, and lingering long COVID symptoms. They're talking about Pfizer. They're talking about AstraZeneca. They're talking about Moderna. And interestingly enough, I don't think Johnson & Johnson is even mentioned in this. They go on to describe, myocarditis, health issues that links to possible cancer. If you even talked about this stuff 2 years ago, you were stricken from using social media, fired from your job. Polite society would excommunicate you and now here we are today, Christian. How refreshing it is to see people finally caught up with us. Once again, the conspiracy theorists are batting 1,000 lately, it seems like. What do you think about this?
Well, I mean, look, Ken Paxton has fought tirelessly, tooth and nail against this, and it's important that we continue to bring that fight about to them. What's happened with our employers, and especially if you had a government job, in the way that those that were in the military, for example, were forced out because they didn't want to take a vaccine. There's a proposition, now that where Texans are able to cast their vote today, and through early voting and on election day, they're able to vote with this proposition against the coercion of the government or any employer to be able to force you to take a vaccine.
Yeah.
And so we need to stand up. We need to make it clear that we're against this.
I'm kind of surprised there haven't been more studies conducted like this by the federal government. They claim there has been, but we all know that's not true, right? If you're telling me that a vaccine that we tested on hardly anybody, thousands of people, was used on hundreds of millions of people, and on almost countless number of people went to places like Dr. Mary Bowden in Houston, Breathe MD, and declared that they were having health issues, that they were having reactions to it, adverse reactions. And the federal government comes back and says, no, it's fine. Somebody's lying to you.
Right. And I'm proudly unvaxxed, and I feel like I made the right choice. I have no regrets. And I think there's a lot of people that are on the other side of that, though, that have questions. They have, now health concerns. Maybe they've contracted something, and it didn't prevent COVID. COVID still happened, and it didn't prevent. The vaccine didn't prevent anything, but they have so many other issues now in their bodies, especially cardiac issues, and they're wondering what's happened.
That's a great question. I'm told by Steve Johnson that there is now a dating website for people who are unvaccinated. Christian, you're single. You're a young man. You're not married yet. Would you use an unvaccinated dating website?
Well, that's a very niche group, but definitely praying that God will bring me the right woman. But that's a very niche group. That's something to consider for sure. What's the name of that? I
don't know. I heard him talk about it the other day. I didn't actually bother to look it up, but I've had bad experiences on dating websites. So, but I'll leave it at that. Hey, I'm Kenny Webster. I'm here with my buddy Christian Collins of the Texas Youth Summit. We're streaming live. We're also live on KPRC Radio. Don't change the channel. More on the way.
Late last night, after a few beers, we discovered the art of deceiving politicians. Just tell them the truth, and they'll never believe you. Kenny Webster's Pursuit of Happiness.
All right, those of you watching us live streaming, stand by. You are watching a live recording. This is going to air in about an hour, but Christian was here right now, and we're just recording segments right now for the afternoon. So if you're wondering what's with the pause in between one segment and the next, wonder no more. There's your explanation. Hang on, everybody. We're back. Early voting begins today in Texas for the March primary. It runs through March 1st. Polls will be open today. They're open now. They'll be open till 7 o'clock tonight. They will not be open Sunday, February 25th, or they will be open on Sunday, but the hours are different, 12 to 7. 79 polling locations throughout Harris County, in case you didn't know. Voters have the opportunity to decide which party's primary to participate in on the day they cast their ballot, because Texas is an open primary state. Earlier today on social media, I saw one of our listeners ask the question, I'm registered as an independent. Will I be able to vote in the Republican primary? Christian, can you answer that question?
You shouldn't be, and we should have closed primaries.
Nobody's registered for anything in Texas, right? You just show up. It's an open primary.
It's an open primary.
Yeah, you're not... I think people are just confused, right? I'm not registered as anything, am I? You just show up at the primary and vote.
Well, yeah, that's the way things are, but it should be different. We should have closed primaries, and there is a proposition where you can vote to have closed primaries from now on, and I think that will do a lot of good to prevent people that aren't actually conservative from maybe Democrats from swaying, the Republican primary.
Right. That seems obvious to me. Here's something else that seems obvious. State Senator Mays Middleton in Texas proposed a law that I think every state should have. Whether you're in a liberal state, whether you're in a conservative state, wherever you are, this seems so obvious to me. No out-of-state money should be involved in campaigning. That, obviously, right? What they call them Zuck bucks, because Mark Zuckerberg spends an absurd amount of money trying to flip other states. And then what did he do? He went out and he spent a bunch of money trying to flip Texas blue. And then for some reason, he moved his company. Didn't he move his company from California to Texas, just like Elon did? He liked our tax system here, but he doesn't want us to be Democrats anymore. How is it that the globalists and the elites, they're so business savvy, and yet at the same time, they're so stupid? Don't they understand if they give all this power to the Marxists, they're not going to get to continue to take advantage of these business loopholes, the entrepreneurial environments in places like Texas or Florida? That's not going to exist anymore after they hand over the keys to the castle to the Marxists. Isn't that obvious?
It should be, but these company leaders that are so woke and their boards that are very woke, they think they're just winning over consumers, winning over customers, but what they're really doing is giving away their power eventually to companies that will want, a government that will want complete control over their companies. And of course, the government will pick winners and losers like they always do when they offer subsidies. But what I'm saying is that eventually that will come back to bite them.
Right.
When Marxism takes over our country, which that seems far-fetched to some people, but that's the path we're heading down. When we look at all the things that are happening, we are moving like that. We're moving toward that with rapid speed.
It makes perfect sense. Let's talk about national elections for a minute today.
Sure.
Nate Silver, as you know, is one of the top leading pollsters in the country. He has just put out a warning for Biden on Democrats. He thinks that Biden is going to lose to Trump. Democrats have no plan to fix the problems. This guy's a pollster and he's a liberal Democrat. He's not the only one that's saying this right now. Another prominent liberal thought leader, the guy that runs Vox, what's his name? Ezra Levant, is that his name? Is saying right now that Ezra Klein, I'm sorry, I'm confusing him with a different person. Ezra Klein is out telling liberal Democrats right now, Joe Biden needs to drop out. This is the last chance right now for you guys to get a better candidate. I think they've already passed that point.
I think it's still possible. I love listening to Senator Ted Cruz's podcast, and what he seems to think, one of his theories is that come the Democrat National Convention, what they'll do is pull out Joe Biden and put in Michelle Obama. And he makes the case because when she was doing an interview recently, she gives this answer about what keeps her up at night. And it was a very rehearsed answer where she covered a number of issues that Democrat voters care about. And so she could have just, left it at maybe she was concerned about her kids or, just a generic answer that maybe many mothers could relate to that are stay-at-home moms. But she gave an answer that was very political and like she's preparing for something. And he said, based on that answer, I would say it's maybe 49 to 51% chance that, 49% chance she doesn't run, 51%, or, 51% chance that she does, or vice versa. And so we're looking at a prospect in Michelle Obama that, would be frightening to Republicans because she has so much appeal, past politics. She's been propped up to be a superstar with a lot of, especially maybe women that watch The View, which I guess that is a lot of Democrat women, but there's a lot of women who don't pay attention to politics and they just like Michelle Obama. So she's kind of like post-partisan.
Yeah. That's a great way of explaining it. I have that audio right here.
Things that keep me up because you don't have control over them. Mm-hmm. And you wonder, where are we in this? Where are our hearts? What's going to happen in this next election? I am terrified about what could possibly happen because our leaders matter. Who we select, who speaks for us, who holds that bully pulpit. It affects us in ways that sometimes I think people take for granted.
Huh. Yeah, it does sound kind of rehearsed, doesn't it? Is that it? That's the thing, right? I watched this as well, and it hadn't occurred to me that it was so rehearsed, but boy, it really seems like it. There's another photo of her that recently went to viral where she's on stage with a handful of other women, and people forget she is giant. And I know people, like, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to make the jokes about Big Mike or whatever, but Michelle Obama is a big girl, isn't she?
Well, people make that joke about her, but take her seriously because she is a formidable opponent. And so, my concern about Michelle Obama is that Democrats are playing this just right that want her to run, because they don't want a primary system where, you have Gavin Newsom running against her. You have, Elizabeth Warren, who kind of is basically very much in line with Bernie Sanders in that wing of the party. And then I can never say his name, but Pete Buttigieg.
Pete Buttigieg, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean.
I don't think he can say it either.
Well, and I mean, his entire position right now is to prop him up to run for something higher later. And so.
And he can breastfeed.
So you're in a situation, if you have an open primary, then Michelle Obama would have to run if and of course Kamala would probably run as well. So you'd have 5 people running for that position. So there's nobody that they can replace Kamala Harris with. I mean, and a lot of Democrats are really tired of her. There's nobody that they can replace Kamala Harris with that, it can't be a white man like Gavin Newsom. That would be really, that would go against Democrat orthodoxy. So the theory is it has to be Michelle Obama.
So the ticket would be Michelle and Kamala?
I don't know that Kamala would still be a part. I think that they would just get rid of her
So
entirely.
who would be her running mate, hypothetically?
That's a good question, but I mean, maybe Gavin Newsom, maybe someone like that. But
I have a theory about this, and some of our female listeners are not going to like it, but I bet a lot of them would agree. I don't think women will elect a woman to be president. People talk about how men are unfair to women or whatever. Here is an inconvenient but very hard to dispute fact. Nobody treats women worse than other women. Think about what women go through to impress their nails. Do you care if women's nails are painted?
No.
I don't. Why do they do that? Do you care how much makeup women wear? That doesn't matter to me.
Most guys just don't want too much makeup.
Right, exactly. Why do women do this? They do it to impress other women. Most of the things women do are about other women. Do you think that women in most states in America, I mean, with the exception of what, like Kristi Noem, how often would, especially an attractive woman, would women elect another woman in a high-ranking position? Christian, I don't think they would.
Well, I think it just depends on the woman. But, I mean, if we're going to have a woman president one day, I hope it's like Sarah Huckabee Sanders or, a Kristi Noem, but definitely not Nikki Haley. I feel like she's been very disloyal to President Trump. So
Sure.
If we're going to have a woman president, my hope is that the first woman president is a conservative, is a Republican. It's not a lefty.
You and I have a long memory, right? I remember when Nikki Haley was governor of South Carolina. I remember when she took down the Confederate flag, when she was anti-Trump, and then her and Trump teamed up and she became his UN ambassador. And I remember a lot of Trump supporters suddenly liked Nikki Haley for a window of time. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
I don't think most people remember that, Christian. I don't think most people do. I don't think most people remember that Joe Biden didn't go to East Palestine, Ohio for a year. And the reason I say that is because today on Twitter, he has a post up about how he was always there for East Palestine, Ohio. No, he wasn't. Even Pete Buttigieg waited a month before he reacted to the fact that there was a train derailment that spilled chemicals all over the Rust Belt, a flyover state. I don't think most people remember this stuff. So I say all that to make this point. Will people remember that Nikki Haley betrayed MAGA? Do you think they'll remember in 2 or 3 years if suddenly she becomes pro-Trump?
I sure hope so. But I mean, if you look at Nikki Haley's career, I mean, she worked her way up, and then after she left office, she went to go work for Boeing. And so she's really
right. That's a big deal, dude.
Yeah. So she's made millions of dollars sitting on the board of Boeing, and she has a vested interest in the war machine. She has a vested interest in seeing the military-industrial complex be very successful, creating and building military equipment and sending it all across the world to fight these endless wars. And so that's just not in touch with the base of the party now. And you were anti-war before it was fashionable, I'm sure.
Right. I'm anti-war before I'm a Republican.
Well, but 20 years ago, that wouldn't have been the most popular stance.
I couldn't have been a Republican then.
Well, now it is mainstream. And,
right.
And that's where the party is. And so she's not in step with the way the Republican Party, the vast majority of Republican voters are at. And President Trump, he espouses the views, the America First philosophy that we need to put America first. When we're spending all this money on all these other borders, like the Ukraine border, but our southern border, especially we experienced this, in Texas, our southern border is wide open.
Yeah.
That's very problematic. And so I think Nikki Haley is problematic for that reason with, primary voters. But the biggest thing I think with MAGA, like you said, is she's been so disloyal. Right after January 6th, she came out and made, these condemning statements against President Trump. And then she went to Mar-a-Lago after she saw the Republican voters were sticking with him.
Yeah.
President Trump has always said he could go down, he could go into New York and shoot someone and his voters would still stick with them. And it's probably true because MAGA is loyal to President Trump. And so she went there kind of trying to work something out and quasi-apologize, and she let him know that if he was going to run, then she wouldn't run. But then she decided she was going to run anyway.
Yeah, she stabbed him in the back. We have to break, but I want to keep talking about that. Remember what you just said. Hey, my guest right now, Christian Collins from the Texas Youth Summit. Follow him on social media. More with him in just a second.
We could certainly slow the aging process if aging had to pass its way through slow-ass Congress. Take another vacation, why don't you? Kenny Webster's Pursuit of Happiness.
Hey, everybody, you're watching a live recording session of a radio broadcast that's going to air in about an hour with me and my buddy Christian Collins from the Texas Youth Summit. If you're wondering why we just stopped, that's why. We're recording segments for a radio show, and you're watching it. So if you guys can just hang on for a second, you can watch some more of it. So Yeah, hold tight. Literally seconds. Welcome back. Kenny Webster here. Texas Youth Summit founder, creator, and leader, Christian Collins. I think arguably the most important thought leader for young conservatives in the state of Texas. I'm very proud to call him a good friend. Christian is in the studio right now. Christian, to those watching us on social media and listening to us live on the radio, where do they find you if they go online?
Well, you can find me on all platforms. Go to christiancollins.org, christiancollins.org, and you can find me on a lot of those different platforms, from Twitter, which is now X, of course, Truth Social, Facebook, Instagram, and my handle is on the meta ones are, at Christian Collins, Texas, and then on X, you can find me at Collins for TX.
Very cool. Yeah. Dude, it's a huge thing that you do. For those that have never been to Texas Youth Summit, it is a big deal. Conservatives, populists, nationalists, libertarians, all who support the Republican Party, generally all people with Judeo-Christian beliefs, generally all America First Republicans, come out and support this event. And I was there last summer. There's hundreds, maybe over 1,000 people there. I think it was a massive event up in the Woodlands at the Marriott, right? Was the hotel where it was at. It's the second one I participated in, and the first one was huge. The second one was even bigger. One of the things I find so remarkable about where the Republican Party is at right now is something you touched on in the last segment, and I really want to talk about this. The Republican Party has become the pro-military, anti-war party. Right. And I think it's so important to be both of those things at the same time. We need a strong military. Let's not be silly, right? Right. One of the things I think libertarians and the Green Party get wrong is they're anti-war, but they're also anti-military.
Right.
Like that's silly. That's ridiculous, guys. We're the leading authority for liberty and freedom in the world. We need to have a military. Let's not be naive. Let's not be ignorant. Let's not be a bunch of clowns. But at the same time, we can't be the world police forever. We're what, $34 trillion in debt. 2/3 of our budget are going towards what? Medicare, the Pentagon, and Social Security. And then you have people talking about we've got to cut costs. We have to quit printing out money with no backing on it. Well, where does that money come from? It can't come from transportation. We have infrastructure crumbling around the country. Where does it come from, right, is a very important question to ask. Well, one thing I think we could pretty much be assured of is with both the Republican Party and the Democrat Party in bed with the military-industrial complex, it doesn't seem like right now, at least not until the next election happens, the world police is going anywhere. You just pointed out how Nikki Haley was in bed with Boeing to the tune of what, millions of dollars, right? Here's something that keeps me up at night, Christian, and this terrifies me to think about this. Antony Blinken, our Secretary of State, the guy, the leading diplomatic authority for the United States, the guy whose job it is to negotiate deals and try to prevent wars, has millions of dollars invested in the military-industrial complex. If he fails at his job, think about this. Is there anyone else on earth that could say this? If he fails at his job, he makes millions of dollars. Doesn't that blow your mind?
It's baffling. And one of the things that I like that you pointed out is that we are pro-military. Those are not mutually exclusive ideals. You can be anti-endless wars and pro-military. And some of the neocons like to say that, people like us are anti-military. There are some really awesome leaders in the Republican Party that I want to point out that were scheduled to speak at the Texas Youth Summit last year. We had Wesley Hunt and Troy Nehls and Corey Mills. Yeah. Those are members of Congress who are America First, who faithfully served our country, who have the right views, and we're all about those America First, former military and awesome members of Congress. We're all about them.
Yeah.
And so, we need to support the military. We need to make sure the military is funded. But it's like this: you have a big stick. Isn't it Theodore Roosevelt who said this? You have a big stick, but you don't. You don't just use it. Anytime. You're very thoughtful and careful.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. What was it he said again? He had
I butchered that quote a little bit.
It's okay. Speak softly and carry a big stick. I almost forgot it myself, but whatever. It's a great point. Exactly. Yeah. It's an important point to make. I'm a big fan of Teddy Roosevelt. I think he's very cool. But the world's changed a lot since he was sending out the Navy around the world to demonstrate America's military might. Fortunately, we were able to do that. We accomplished that goal. And now what? So now what? Now every other country, Germany, France, Italy, they know that we'll write the check for NATO.
Right.
They don't have to do anything about it. The latest misinformation from the media, the big blatant lie, was them misquoting Donald Trump when he talked about how he would withhold funding and encourage Russia to attack our NATO allies. It's not what he said. It's absolutely not what he said. If you go watch that video, it's just like, what was it? The Charlottesville video. Very good people on both sides. They made it sound like he was talking about neo-Nazis. But even Michael Rappaport, one of the biggest anti-Trumpers in Hollywood, has admitted when you watch 40 seconds of that clip instead of watching 10 seconds of that clip, it's pretty obvious that's not what he said. Right? So they do this. They chop up a soundbite. They turn it into something else. The real problem here, obviously, besides the liberal media lying to us all the time, is that we are writing big, giant blank checks to NATO. Look at Ukraine. Look what's going on there. Ukraine can't explain what's happening to the money that we give them. They don't even know. Ukraine is constantly arresting people in their own government, high-ranking officials, right? They don't have elections in Ukraine. There's a paramilitary faction. They're cops and military. That's illegal in the United States, and it's illegal for a reason. And oh, by the way, they used to be a white supremacist militia called the Azov Battalion. Amazingly, this is the exact group of people that liberal Democrats in America like. I don't understand that. And they tell you we can't support Israel without supporting Ukraine. And I believe you have some thoughts on that. We were just talking about this. If you look at what's going on in the Mideast right now, Joe Biden says the Houthi rebels are afraid to do anything. That's the latest from the Mideast. It doesn't seem like that's true. If Biden has scared the Houthi rebels into behaving better, it's not showing. They're misbehaving all over the place. Oh, by the way, Al-Qaeda training camps are back. Those have just reopened. This of the one military accomplishment that you absolutely cannot deny for Trump, besides no new wars, was the fact that he pretty much got rid of these Islamic extremist groups during his time as president. He drone bombed the hell out of ISIS. Al-Qaeda went away. They were pretty much quiet until, a year ago? And then all of a sudden, October 7th happens, and oh, guess what? Islamic extremism is back, isn't it?
Yeah, you look at all the different issues that are facing our country. If President Trump were still in office, if 2020 wouldn't have happened the way it did, and a lot of us believe that it was stolen. There was a lot of impropriety there. There's still questions, and there's a lot of irregularities. We're looking at that election and wondering what happened. But if he were still in office, you can guarantee that Russia would not have invaded Ukraine. You can guarantee that October 7th, Hamas's attack on Israel, this brutal attack there's been nothing like it since the Holocaust. That wouldn't have happened. We can guarantee that China would not be talking about taking over Taiwan now.
Right.
The world and our foreign policy is in shambles. And of course, let's not forget the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. The way that was brought about, of course, we needed to get out of Afghanistan eventually, but we wouldn't have left all of our equipment behind.
They now have an Air Force.
And so, so many things wrong with the foreign policy of Joe Biden.
Yeah.
None of this would have happened if President Trump were in office. But here we are. And, I love President Trump's approach because he's a businessman, right? And he realizes there's a lopsided trade agreement with many of our allies, with the European Union. They benefit tremendously. And of course, we are paying for their security. We're paying for the Western world's security.
Yeah.
And they're not paying their fair share. So he's done everything that he possibly can to state, where he stands. And to make matters worse, they despise him. Many of these leaders, in the European Union and in NATO, they despise him,
right?
And he's protecting them, and that's what his experience was as president. So Hillary Clinton definitely misquoted him, and she says that he's going to pull out of NATO, and there's probably a lot of conservatives that would like that. But I think what he was trying to say was you have to pay your fair share. And when we look at the issue of Ukraine and
he was speaking in past tense, like he was telling a story about something that happened a few years ago when there was no Russian-Ukraine war happening.
Right.
Right, when he said that, and that's the thing they're misquoting him on.
The fact of the matter is people feared President Trump. Putin feared President Trump. This never would have happened, but here we are in this situation, and you talked about Israel. Israel is a very separate issue. When we talk about funding, that comes from the United States Congress, and by the way, every war that we are going into, whether we're offering funding, but especially if we're going to put boots on the ground, it should always be decided by Congress.
Yeah.
But here we are in a situation with Israel, and this place I've been blessed to go to Israel as a 4,000-year history, and it's directly connected to our faith. Ukraine is a separate issue.
It's big time. I have a theory, too, about this today. I don't know if you saw this. 26 European unions just signed this pledge to have a ceasefire in Gaza in Israel. And amazingly, one country from Europe did not sign, and it was Ukraine. And you might wonder, why would Ukraine not want a ceasefire in Israel? I have a crazy theory about this. Tell me if you think I'm nuts. As long as there's a war in Israel, right, the cost of oil and gas is up because that entire region has violence going on. It's happening in Lebanon. It's happening in Egypt. It's happening in Syria, all over the region. Iraq, obviously, right? As long as that's going on, oil and gas is expensive. As long as oil and gas is expensive, Russia has money because they're a petrostate. As long as Russia has money, they keep going to war with Ukraine. As long as Ukraine is in a war with Russia, they are relevant. So my point is, I don't think Ukraine wants the war to end. I don't think they want their own war to end. And if the war in Israel ends, it's one more thing that speeds up the end of their war. Is that a crazy theory? Am I nuts?
That's probably true. But, again, I do think that those two wars are separate issues, and I think there's more complexities that are surrounding, the ongoing war in Israel. I think there's so many people that are wanting the Israelis to stop.
Yeah.
But let's remember that, October 7th was the biggest massacre of Jews that we have seen since the Holocaust.
Insane.
It's insane. And so now all of these countries are turning on Israel, and the media is against Israel. And, we've seen these pro-Palestinian marches all across the Western world, in every major city in the Western world, really.
Yeah.
And so the media in lockstep, they're turning on Israel, and that's what we're seeing. And we must stand with Israel, but yet demand answers in Ukraine. And there are a lot of people who have a nuanced position on Ukraine. It's that there has to be some compromises made eventually.
I agree.
To bring this to an end. And I think Tucker Carlson's interview of Vladimir Putin was really powerful.
Journalism is, for the sake of journalism, very shocking stuff. Hey, we got a break. I want to talk more about this. Christian Collins is here from the Texas Youth Summit. Don't change your channel. More right after this.
So we're supposed to live within our income so we can afford to pay taxes to a government that can't live within its income? Yeah, that. Kenny Webster's Pursuit of Happiness.
Hey, y'all, you're watching a live recording session right now with me and my buddy Christian Collins. If you're watching us streaming right now, hey, share this video if you don't mind. We love you. We appreciate your support. It's early voting today. Started today in Texas. So Christian was in town. In town. He lives in the north suburbs. It's not like he came that far. But, he was in the area, and I told him, come in the studio today and let's record a little bit. So that's what you're watching right now. We went long on the other segment, so we only have a few minutes left. Stick around. We're almost done. We are back. Christian Collins in studio right now from the Texas Youth Summit. My brother from another. Christian, as important as the war overseas is, I think we both agree, we have a war in our own backyard, and it is a war over common sense. And it is truly insane what is being argued over right now. Let me start with this. You get up, you read the news, and you think, that's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. And then you turn to the next news story and you go, I was wrong. This is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. And today it's this. Today it is this. There is a university hospital study conducted in the United Kingdom, of course, because Britain truly is the canary in the mine shaft for America. When something weird happens in England, it happens in America just a short time later. And today that it is this. A UK university hospital system has claimed that milk produced by trans women, you already know what I'm about to say and you don't want to hear it, do you, is as good for babies as biological women's breast milk. Now, folks, this is going to get gross here for just a minute, but I am pretty sure if a man is producing breast milk, It's not breast milk. I don't know what it is. Pus, I don't know what it is. There's no way that's healthy. But forget about like on a nutritional level. What about on a psychological level? Or forget about on a psychological level. What about on a nutritional level? How can this possibly be good for a small child?
Well, I mean, if they're calling it a trans man, then it's a biological woman, you know. So that's the way that this is happening. I haven't read the article, but what I can say is
no, they're saying trans women. Okay, so it's a trans woman is a man, so it's a biological man taking hormones, so much hormones that they're lactating. Christian, you're looking at me like my dog when there's a pizza guy at the door. Like, what was that noise? What the hell is going on? They're talking about dudes, bro. They're talking about if you
so
and
it's a biological man that is taken.
Because trans means opposite day, right? So the study says trans woman. So they're talking about men. So if you hopped up a dude on enough, women's hormones, right? Estrogen, right? And the dude starts lactating, you could give that to a baby, is what they're saying at the university, at the UK Hospital of Sussex, University of Sussex Hospital System. They sent letters to campaigners, noted that after a combination of drugs, good Lord, after we hopped up a dude on drugs, he produced something we could give to a baby. Look, you and I both have religious beliefs that this will make our heads spin, but just putting religion aside for a minute, there's no way this is healthy, right?
I don't know what type of concoction that is, but that is not good milk, and I would not feel comfortable any child having that milk. That's if it is milk. I don't know what that is, but that is not okay.
Yeah, I wonder if this video is going to get taken off YouTube just because you and I are talking about this. I think this is probably the line, right? We're allowed to talk about a study. Are we allowed to disagree with studies? I don't even know. This is why I quit live streaming on social media.
Yeah.
For those that just turned on your radio, we're live streaming today on social media, something we haven't done in a long time, on multiple platforms. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, and I'm on YouTube. And I got to think one of them is going to take this video down just because I dared to say I don't think that a man should breastfeed a baby. And you know what? Fine. Take my profile down. I don't think they should.
Well, you're exactly right. And you can have the right approach toward people and care about all people and love all people and recognize that there are people that are mentally unstable and sick in their minds, and recognize this as mental instability, sickness, and putting that aside and recognizing though that this is evil. What's happening, the issue itself is evil. There are confused people that we feel sorry for, but the issue itself is evil, and it's twisting the minds.
Someone in the comments section just said, and Chris on Facebook just said, "I bet it tastes like Bud Light." I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry, Christian. What were you trying to say?
Well, on that note, that's a good. Yeah, I mean, there are sick people, and we feel sorry for those people. But the issue itself, this confusion itself, is evil. And what's happening is, with so many people, their minds are twisted. It's evil, especially what's happening with children. Because if you're an adult, it really doesn't affect. It really doesn't affect us, but when it affects children like that, and he's this biological man, as you say, is breastfeeding a child.
Yep,
that is evil. And when it affects children, and when this type of ideology is pushed on children to where they're wanting to have sex changes and hormone therapy, and that is evil. That is pure evil.
All right, there's still good in this world, Christian. We're going to leave the show today with this. We must get something to get that terrible taste of Bud Light and men's breast milk out of your mouth. A Kentucky bus driver is getting praised right now by the media and the local citizens for buying a student pajamas. Here's the story. This little boy was in tears because he didn't have any pajamas. It was pajama day at school. This warms my heart. And a 6-year-old boy named Levi Carrier didn't have any. So his bus driver, a guy named Larry, took time out of his day to buy Levi's some pajamas and bring them to school. Here's Levi and Larry talking about it.
I asked him, I was like, what's going on? What happened? And he simply looked up and said, I don't have pajamas. And I said, well, this morning you were crying, and I felt it. So I want your day to be a little bit better. And I asked him, I said, would you try the pajamas on when you get to class and have a great day? A lot of times we're the first person after their parents leave that they see, and we're the last person they see before they go home. So we can make a big difference in a child's life just by saying good morning.
That he's kind, and that his heart is filled with joy.
Christian, there's still good in this world. There are still good people. I know this might seem like a small thing in the grand scheme of things, but thank God for bus driver Larry in Kentucky.
That is awesome. And I just talked to a friend of mine. His name's David. He's a really awesome guy here in Houston. And, you know, he works with big brothers, big sisters. So, and he was saying that, you know, there are organizations you can support that make a massive difference. And I would like to think that Texas Youth Summit is doing that with so many thousands of young people who have come through our doors and we've been able to affect. But sometimes if you can just make a difference in one person's life, it's very tangible. And you have a relationship through big brothers and big sisters. And I've watched David, you know, he's encouraged so many young people. You know, he's mentored people. But David also, you know, he's encouraged people, you know, with this organization, and he's brought up this young man, and, you know, they work out and do all kinds of things through Big Brother and Big Sister. So, you know, if you can find time to mentor someone young like that and help them or just make their day, it can change their life. And Kenny, you know, I appreciate all the work that you do to spread the truth on this radio program, and you're making a big difference yourself. Thanks, my brother. There's a really cool program up in your neck of the woods that helps out foster kids. And I met this woman at your event, Rebecca Smith of Love Heals in Montgomery County. It's really cool what they do, and I just wanted to shed a little light on them. This news story kind of reminded me of them, and those are people I met at your event. But anyway, I want to thank my buddy Christian Collins, a very awesome Texas patriot, an incredible guy, one of the most important young conservative leaders in the country, in my humble opinion, for being my guest for the past hour. Find him on X and Facebook and Instagram and anywhere else where you could find social media. He's out there. He's very active. And check out his website, TexasYouthSummit.com. I'm Kenny Webster. I love you all. Have an awesome afternoon. We'll be back bright and early tomorrow morning for another live edition of Walton and Johnson. Have a great day.
You are listening to the Pursuit of Happiness Radio. Tell the government to kiss your ass.